Hello everyone, welcome to Everyday Essential series of Shantha Lakshmi IAS Academy, where we are going to discuss the essential topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express, especially in terms of the prelims perspective. So today, as part of this series, let us discuss the topics of 13th and 14th of July 2025. First, we are going to discuss about the Railway Protection Force, and second about the eco-sensitive zones, and third about the ordinarily resident, and fourth Ginji Fort, and finally Cambodia country mapping. So starting with our first topic, that is Railway Protection Force. So why we are discussing this Railway Protection Force now? See, for the first time in the railways histories, the women IPS officer has been appointed as the DG, that is the Director General of this particular force, that is the Railway Protection Force. She is known as the Sonali Mishra. Sonali Mishra is a senior IPS officer, belongs to the 1993 batch, belonging to the Madhya Pradesh cadre. She also received the President's Police Medal for the Distinguished Service as well as the Police Medal for the Meritorious Service. So let's see in detail about this force, that is the Railway Protection Force RPF. So this is a Central Armed Police Force which comes under the Ministry of Railways. So coming to the history of this Railway Protection Force, see, until 1861, this protecting the railway property and the passenger area was entrusted with the Ward and Watch Department. Ward and Watch Department of a private company. But in the year 1861, with the enactment of this Police Act, the Railway Police has been enacted to look into the protection and the security of the railway property as well as the passenger areas. And India, after gaining independence in the year 1954, has appointed a high power committee on railway security to look into the issues of this railway security. And this high power committee has recommended to enact a Railway Protection Force Act, thereby giving birth to this Railway Protection Force RPF. For what is the mandate of this RPF? For the better protection and the security of railway property as well as the passengers and the passengers area. So that's how in the 1957 this RPF was established, and this particular Act, Railway Protection Force Act, was amended in the year 1985 and the 2003 respectively. And in the year 1966, one more act has been enacted, that is the Railway Property and Unlawful Possession Act 1966. So through this act, this RPF has got the power to search, arrest, inquire and prosecute offences related to this railway property or the passenger safety. So with this act, the Railway Property Unlawful Possession Act gave the powers to this force, that is RPF, to search, arrest, inquire and prosecute offences related to the railway property and the passengers. So this is the small details about this, or the basic details about the Railway Protection Force, which is a Central Armed Police Force. And one more important fact is that this Railway Protection Force has the more number of women staff. More number of women in this RPF compared to all Central Armed Police Forces. Now moving to a second topic, that is the eco-sensitive zones. So why we are discussing this eco-sensitive zones? See, the Standing Committee of the National Board for Wildlife has decided to revisit the government's 2011 guidelines on declaration of these eco-sensitive zones around the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries to make them more site-specific and tuned to ecological and the socio-economic realities of each region. So, the Standing Committee of the National Board for Wildlife has decided to revisit their own guidelines, that is the 2011 guidelines, which provided for these eco-sensitive zones around the national parks or the wildlife sanctuaries. So the Standing Committee of the National Board for Wildlife, chaired by the Union Minister of Environment and Forest and Climate Change has told that extending a blanket of 10 kilometer 10 kilometer eco-sensitive zones to all protected areas, irrespective of their local, ecological, and the geographical conditions, will not serve the intended purpose. So he said that so the ESZ rules should not be uniform. The rules should not be uniform across the country. Instead, they must be adapted to reflect the ecological, socio-economic realities of each region. So let's see what is this eco-sensitive zones. So these eco-sensitive zones are defined under this National Environment Policy 2006. It states that these eco-sensitive zones are areas with unique environmental resources which require special attention for their conservation. The name itself is telling that eco-sensitive zone. Sensitive means they have to be protected very carefully. So this National Environment Policy 2006 defines these areas as the unique environmental resources which require special attention for their conservation. And regarding this, in the government in the 2011 released the guidelines of this eco-sensitive zones. And there they said that these eco-sensitive zones act as a shock absorbers for the protected areas, whether it is the national park, wildlife sanctuaries, or any other protected parks. These act as the shock absorbers, and they also act as a transition zone from areas requiring higher protection to those requiring lesser protection. And regarding this eco-sensitive zones, the Supreme Court has directed that the areas whichever has not recognized this ESZ eco-sensitive zones, that areas in that areas the area surrounding that protected area, that is up to 10-kilometer range, is designated as this eco-sensitive zone. So if this is national park and this is the 10 kilometer, so the surrounding area which is about the 10-kilometer area is regarded as this eco-sensitive zones. This 10-kilometer criteria was given by the Supreme Court. But now what is the Standing Committee of National Board for Wildlife is saying that, so see, this 10-kilometer area of eco-sensitive zones may not apply to all the protected areas. So we need to have a location specific, environment specific, and the socio-economic conditions of that area specific eco-sensitive zones. So they are now trying to revisit these guidelines. And in these eco-sensitive zones, how it will act as a shock absorber? See, in these eco-sensitive zones, these activities are prohibited. Those are mining, industrial activities, deforestation, and construction activities are fully prohibited. They are not allowed in this eco-sensitive zones. Why? Because by allowing these conditions, it will impact the protected area or the wildlife in that protected area. But it will also allow, but with some conditions, that is the sustainable agriculture and the ecotourism. Ecotourism activities will be allowed in these eco-sensitive zones, but with some regulations and the conditions. So this is about the eco-sensitive zones. Now moving to a third topic, that is ordinarily resident. So why we are discussing this ordinarily resident? See, this SIR, Special Intensive Revision, has been in news, right? So, the Election Commission of India has initiated this special intensive revision of the electoral rolls in the Bihar. So, regarding these special intensive revisions, we have covered this topic in our previous Everyday Essentials. If you are not aware of the special intensive revisions, please go and watch that video. So this has kindled the debate around the term ordinarily resident for the purpose of being included in the electoral rolls of a constituency. So as part of this special intensive revision in Bihar, which are announced by the Election Commission, so now there is a debate on this, who are these ordinarily resident for including in this electoral rolls of a constituency. We'll see what is or who are considered as the ordinarily resident. See the section 19 of the ROPA Act 1950, that is the representation of the people act 1950 allows for the inclusion of this ordinarily resident in the electoral rolls, and this was given in the under the section 19 of this ROPA Act 1950. And whereas the section 20 of this ROPA Act says that the what is the meaning of this ordinarily resident. The section 20 tells about who constitutes this ordinarily resident. So this section 20 says that a person merely owning or possessing a dwelling house in that particular constituency will not be considered as the ordinarily resident. See, here A is the person is living in some X village, and in that X assembly constituency, not a village, assembly constituency area. He is not living here, but he has a permanent home or a dwelling house in this X constituency. So according to this section 20, merely owning or possessing a dwelling house is not considered as a ordinarily resident. Now, who considers as the ordinarily resident according to the section 20? So it says that the person temporarily absent from his or her place of residence shall continue to be the ordinarily resident. See, here, it is if a person permanently has a house in this assembly constituency will not be considered as a ordinarily resident. But if a person temporarily absent from his or her place of the residence shall continue to be this ordinarily resident. It also given that who are those members? Those members are the members of the armed forces of the union or the armed police force of a state serving outside that state and employed by the government of India in a post outside India, and whoever the person holding a constitutional office declared by the president in consultation with the election commission are considered along with their spouse. Not only the person holding the constitutional office, but also their spouse are also considered as the ordinarily resident according to this section 20 of the ROPA Act 1950. So these persons, whoever is temporarily absent from their place of residence is considered as the ordinarily resident according to this, remember, section 20 of the ROPA Act 1950. And also, this section was amended in the year 2010 and added one clause, that is the section 20A. It includes or enables the non-resident Indians, NRIs, non-resident Indians who have shifted out of India, even for long term, to register and vote in the constituency in which their address as per passport is located. So the NRIs who have shifted out of India and living there for a long time. So this section 28 tells us that which address is there in their passport. So in this address, this NRIs can register and vote in that constituency. So these will also come as the ordinarily resident in terms of this section 20A of the ROPA Act, Representation of the People Act 1950. So this is about the ordinarily resident. So remember, ordinarily resident is a person temporarily absent from his or her place, and the some criteria are given. Now moving to our fourth topic, that is dingy food. So why we are discussing this? See, in our last everyday essential series, we have discussed about the Maratha military landscapes, right? Why we have discussed? So in its 47th meeting of the World Heritage Committee, they decided to include this Maratha military landscape as the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So this Maratha military landscape included 12 forts. In that, 11 are from Maharashtra. 11 belong to Maharashtra, and 1/4 belongs to Tamil Nadu. And this 1/4 is nothing but this Jinji Fort. See here, you can see the visual of this Jinji Fort. So this Jinji Fort is also known as the Troy of the East. This was given by the British. Or it can also be hailed as the Great Wall of the South India. Or it can be said as the most impregnable fortress in India. That means most unconquerable fortress in India. And this was given by the Maratha leader Chhatrapati Shivaji. So Chhatrapati Shivaji told that this Jinji fort is the most impregnable fortress in India, and this is located in the Viluppuram district in Tamil Nadu state. And this Jinji fort is perched around three hills, that is the Krishnagiri hill, Rajagiri hill and Chandrayandurg hill. So this Jinji fort was constructed in 1109 AD by the Anantakot, and later it was fortified by the Krishna Kon. And after that, there were subsequent fortifications by the Cholas, Vijayanagara kings, Marathas, Mughals, and later the French and the British also fortified this Jinji fort. But it came into the prominence during this period, that is the Shivaji's son Rajaram Chhatrapati period. Why? This Rajaram Chhatrapati during the Mughal siege. During the Mughal siege of the Maratha kingdom in the 1700s, he took refuge in this Jinji fort. So from then, this Jinji fort has been in prominence during this. Why? Because of this Shivaji's son Rajaram Chhatrapati took refuge in this Jinji fort. So this is about the Jinji fort. Now moving to a final topic, that is the Cambodia. So why we are discussing this Cambodia? See, now only we discussed that 47th World Heritage Committee meeting, our Indian Maratha military landscape have inscribed as the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Right? So like that only, other countries, some historical importance or natural important cultures or the archaeological sites have also been inscribed in this UNESCO World Heritage list. So in that one is that three locations used by the Cambodia's brutal Khmer Rouge regime as torture and the execution sites 50 years ago have been added by the UNESCO to its World Heritage list. So this inscription also coincided with the 50th anniversary of the rise to power by the communist Khmer Rouge regime, which caused the deaths of an estimated 1.7 million Cambodians during a 4-year regime from the 1975 to 1979. So you can say some three locations which are used by the Cambodian. This is Khmer regime. Khmer regime. These three locations were used by the Khmer regime as a torture and the execution sites. So those three locations were included in this UNESCO World Heritage Sites. You can see the picture of those three locations. Two locations picture. And now Cambodia is a country in the Southeast Asia. Country in the Southeast Asia. It is bordered by Thailand, Laos, and the Vietnam. And one more is this Gulf of Thailand to its southwest. And this Cambodia's capital is the Phnom Penh. And this Cambodia is dominated by the tropical climate, and it is drainaged by the Mekong River as well as the Tonle Sap Lake. This Tonle Sap is the largest freshwater lake in South Asia. This Tonle Sap is the largest freshwater lake in Southeast Asia. So what is the largest freshwater lake in Asia? We discussed this in our previous everyday essentials. So largest freshwater lake in Asia is the Lake Baikal. And the largest freshwater lake in India is the Vular Lake. In India, it is the Vular Lake. And what is the largest freshwater lake in the world? That is the Lake Superior of United States of America. Lake Superior is the largest freshwater lake in the world. Lake Baikal is the largest freshwater lake in Asia. And Lake Tonle Sap, which is in Cambodia, is the largest freshwater lake in the Southeast Asia. And Vular Lake is the largest freshwater lake in India. And it is the least developed country according to the United Nations. And you can see here others is that Cambodia has Dangret Mountains and the Cardamom Mountains also. Here it is Mekong River and here it is Tonle Sap Lake. So that's all for today. Thank you.